The dress was new, that much I was sure of. A vibrant red, something she wouldn't usually wear, too bold, too attention-grabbing for Amelia. But it wasn't just the dress. It was the way she moved in it, a subtle sway in her hips, a lightness in her step I hadn't seen in years. And then there was the detail that snagged in my mind, a tiny, unsettling thread. I could see the faint outline of her nipples pushing against the thin fabric. Amelia never went without a bra. Never. It was a small thing, almost imperceptible to anyone else. But to me, after 18 years of knowing every contour of her body, every habit, it was a jarring discordance. We were getting ready for our anniversary dinner. 18 years marked on the calendar tomorrow. 15 years since we said, I do. A lifetime, or so it felt. The house was buzzing with a nervous energy, mostly mine, I realized, as I watched Amelia in the mirror. She was humming softly, applying lipstick with meticulous care, her eyes bright, almost too bright. It was like watching a stranger, a vibrant, polished version of the woman I knew, but different, unfamiliar. That's a new dress, I said, trying to keep my voice casual, neutral. I was leaning against the doorframe of our bedroom, pretending to check my cufflinks, but really, I was watching her, scrutinizing every detail. She met my gaze in the mirror, her smile a touch too wide, too quick. Do you like it? She asked, turning slightly, posing almost, and the red fabric shifted, confirming my earlier unsettling observation. It's red, I replied, carefully avoiding the underwear comment, not wanting to sound like a possessive creep, not yet. You don't usually wear red. She laughed, a light, tinkling sound that didn't quite reach her eyes. A girl can change her mind, can't she? Thought I'd spice things up for our anniversary. She winked, but it felt forced, theatrical, like an actress playing a role she hadn't quite mastered. Spice things up. The phrase hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. Our life hadn't been about spice for years. Comfort, routine, a quiet contentment. That was us. Spice was for younger couples, for the newly in love, not for us, not anymore. Or so I thought. Lately, Amelia had been different. It wasn't one big thing, more like a collection of subtle shifts, almost imperceptible on their own, but together, they formed a disquieting pattern. She'd started spending more time at the gym, for instance, suddenly obsessed with classes and personal training sessions that stretched late into the evenings. Gotta get in shape, Caleb, she'd say, flexing her bicep playfully, but her eyes held a different kind of energy, a restless, almost frantic spark. Then there were the clothes. New outfits appearing in her closet, dresses tighter, skirts shorter, heels higher than anything she'd worn in years. Makeup, too. Subtle, but noticeable. A touch more eyeliner, a brighter lipstick, a careful contouring that made her cheekbones pop. It was like she was re-emerging, shedding years, trying to recapture something lost, or perhaps attract something new. And the distance. That was the most unsettling change of all. The emotional space that had opened up between us, a chasm widening with every passing week. Conversations felt strained, forced. Her laughter, once a familiar melody in our home, was now reserved for phone calls taken in the other room, the murmur of her voice just audible, the words indistinct, secretive. Our weekend walks, a ritual we'd cherished for years, had dwindled to almost nothing. Busy, she'd say. So much to do, her eyes flitting away, never quite meeting mine. I wanted to believe it was just a phase, a midlife itch, a sudden urge to feel young again as we approached another milestone anniversary. Maybe the red dress, the gym sessions, the new perfume, were just her way of celebrating, of making an effort for us, for our 18 years. Maybe I was just being paranoid, reading too much into harmless changes. But then, there was the underwear. Or rather, the distinct lack of it. It was a small detail, almost insignificant, but it niggled at me, a tiny, persistent alarm bell ringing in the back of my mind. Amelia was meticulous, always put together, even at home. Going without a bra, especially in a dress like that, wasn't just out of character, it felt deliberate. Like a signal. To whom? As we walked out to the car, the red dress swirling around her legs, the new perfume a heady cloud in the cool evening air, I couldn't shake the feeling that tonight wasn't about celebrating 18 years. It felt like the beginning of something else entirely. Something I wasn't sure I wanted to know. And as she slid into the passenger seat, her smile bright but distant, I had a sudden, chilling premonition. This anniversary dinner wasn't going to be a celebration. It was going to be a reckoning. The restaurant was dimly lit, all soft jazz and hushed conversations, the kind of place Amelia used to love for anniversaries. Tonight, though, the romantic ambience felt suffocating, a heavy blanket of pretense draped over our strained silence. Amelia picked at her salad, the red dress a splash of defiant color against the muted tones of the room. I watched her, every subtle movement, every fleeting expression magnified under the weight of my suspicion. The way the candlelight flickered across her bare shoulders, the almost too casual way she adjusted the neckline of her dress, it all screamed of a deliberate exhibition. And the absence of a bra, that tiny detail that had lodged itself in my brain, it pulsed with a silent, accusatory rhythm. It wasn't just about comfort, it was a statement, a subtle rebellion, or worse, an invitation. "Everything all right?" she asked, her voice a little too bright, a little too forced, breaking the heavy silence. She finally met my eyes, but her gaze flickered away almost immediately, landing on the flickering candle between us. "Just tired," I said, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. Tired of the pretense, tired of the questions swirling in my head, tired of the woman across the table who felt increasingly like a stranger. The dinner crawled by, each course a painful exercise in strained conversation and forced smiles. We talked about Emily, about her college applications, about the weather. Anything but us. Anything but the elephant in the room, the unspoken questions that hung heavy between us, thick and suffocating as that new perfume. All the while, the image of that fleeting notification on her phone screen, the intimate message from an unknown number, kept flashing in my mind, a neon sign pointing towards a truth I was both desperate to uncover and terrified to face. Back home, the silence in the house was even more oppressive. Emily was still out, and the quiet, usually a welcome respite, now felt like a vacuum, sucking all the air out of the room. Amelia went to change, disappearing into the bedroom, leaving me alone in the living room with my churning thoughts. I knew I couldn't let it go. Not anymore. The unease had solidified into a cold, hard certainty. Something was happening. Something was wrong. And I needed to know what. With a resolve that felt both heavy and liberating, I walked into the bedroom. Amelia was in the bathroom, the door slightly ajar, the sound of running water filling the space. Her phone lay on the bedside table, face down, but not quite hidden. Like she wanted to be caught, or maybe, didn't care anymore if she was. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the otherwise silent house. I hesitated for a moment, guilt warring with a desperate need for answers. But the image of that red dress, the scent of that unfamiliar perfume, the ghost of that intimate message, they pushed me forward. My fingers trembled slightly as I reached for her phone. It was unlocked. Of course it was. She was getting careless, or maybe, brazen. I swiped up, my thumb hovering over the call log icon. This was it. The moment of truth. The call log opened, a list of recent calls, mostly routine, work-related numbers, Emily, her sister. And then, there it was. An unfamiliar number, nestled amongst the contacts, but standing out like a sore thumb. No name, just digits. But the frequency. Multiple calls a day, some lasting for minutes, some for much longer, spread out over the last few weeks. And the timing. Often late at night, or during her gym sessions, times when she was unaccounted for. My breath hitched in my throat. This was it. This was the smoking gun. But who was it? The generic contact name she'd used, client update, mocked me with its blandness. I needed a name. I needed to know. A quick search online, a reverse phone lookup app, a tool I felt a pang of shame for using, but justified as necessary, and I typed in the number, my fingers clumsy with adrenaline. The app whirred for a moment. Then the screen flashed, and a name appeared. Ryan Miller. The name hit me with the force of a physical blow, knocking the air out of my lungs. Ryan. Amelia's ex-husband. Ryan. It couldn't be. It was impossible. Amelia had always spoken of Ryan with such disdain. Their marriage, a disaster. A youthful mistake she'd regretted ever since. He was the cautionary tale, the ghost of a past relationship she'd supposedly buried and never looked back on. Ryan. The man she claimed to despise. The bathroom door clicked open, and Amelia emerged, wrapped in her robe, her hair damp from the shower. She looked refreshed, younger, and my stomach twisted with a sickening certainty. She saw the phone in my hand, her eyes widening almost imperceptibly, a flicker of something. Fear? Guilt? Crossing her face before she quickly masked it with a practiced nonchalance. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice cool, detached. But I could hear a tremor underneath, a subtle vibration of unease. I held up the phone, the call log still open, the name Ryan Miller glowing on the screen. "Who's Ryan Miller, Amelia?" I asked, my voice low, dangerously calm, the question hanging heavy in the suddenly charged air between us. Her eyes darted to the phone, then back to mine, her carefully constructed composure starting to crack. I don't know any Ryan Miller," she said, her voice a little too quick, a little too practiced. The lie hung in the air, flimsy and transparent. "Don't insult my intelligence, Amelia," I said, taking a step closer, the red dress suddenly seeming like a taunt, a blatant act of defiance. "This number. The calls. Who is he?" She hesitated, her eyes darting around the room, searching for an escape, a lie, anything to deflect. But the walls were closing in, the truth cornering her. And then, with a sigh that seemed to deflate her, she finally spoke, the words barely a whisper, but clear enough to shatter the fragile remnants of our 18-year marriage. It's Ryan," she admitted, her voice barely audible, her gaze dropping to the floor, the confession hanging in the air like a death sentence. "It's Ryan," Amelia whispered, the name hanging in the air like a dropped glass, shattering the remnants of our carefully constructed evening. Before I could even fully process the shock, the bedroom door creaked open, and Emily stood there, silhouetted in the hallway light. She looked from me to her mother, her expression unreadable, a strange stillness in her teenage features. "I know," she said, her voice flat, devoid of any inflection, and the two words landed in the room with the force of a physical blow. I stared at her, dumbfounded, my mind struggling to catch up. You know," I stammered, the question sounding weak even to my own ears. "Know what? That her mother was having an affair? With her ex-husband?" It was too absurd, too twisted to be real. Emily stepped fully into the room, closing the door softly behind her, cutting us off from the rest of the house, trapping us in this suffocating bubble of revelation. She didn't look at me, her gaze fixed on her mother, a strange, almost protective expression softening her features. "I've known for a while," she continued, her voice gaining a chilling. "Mom told me." "Told her?" Amelia told Emily? My 17-year-old daughter knew about her mother's affair and, what? Was okay with it? The world tilted on its axis, reality warping into something grotesque and unrecognizable. "Emily," I began, my voice rising, laced with disbelief and a dawning horror. "What are you saying? Do you even understand what's going on?" She finally turned to me, her eyes locking onto mine, and there was no childish confusion there, no teenage naivete. Just a cold, unsettling clarity. "I understand perfectly, Dad," she said, each word precise, measured. "Mom's happy. For the first time in a long time, she's actually happy. Happy. Happy betraying her husband, her marriage, our family? Happy sneaking around with her ex?" The word felt obscene, a grotesque mockery of everything I thought we stood for. "Happy," I repeated, the word catching in my throat, laced with bitter disbelief. "Emily, Your mother is having an affair. With Ryan. Your mother's ex-husband. Do you hear yourself? She didn't flinch. Didn't even blink. Yes, Dad, I hear myself. And maybe you should start listening too. Mom hasn't been happy for years. Years, Dad. You just haven't noticed. Her words were like a slap, sharp and stinging. Years. Had I really been that blind? That oblivious to my own wife's unhappiness? The thought was sickening, a cold wave of self-doubt washing over me, even amidst the shock of the betrayal. And Ryan, Emily continued, her voice taking on a softer, almost dreamy quality. Ryan understands her. He gets her in a way you never have. Understands her? I scoffed, the bitterness rising in my throat. By sleeping with her behind my back? That's your definition of understanding. Don't be crude, Dad, Emily snapped, her composure finally cracking, a flicker of anger flashing in her eyes. It's more than just that. It's deeper. Mom and Ryan have a connection, a real connection. Something you and Mom lost a long time ago. Lost? I echoed, feeling like I was drowning in a sea of twisted logic. We didn't lose anything. We had a marriage, a family. We had 18 years. 15 years of what, Dad? Emily challenged, stepping closer, her voice rising to match mine, her teenage frame suddenly radiating a fierce unsettling. 15 years of you being you. Always working, always distant, always there, but never really present. Her words hit me harder than any accusation Amelia could have thrown. From Emily, my daughter, the child I adored, the one I thought I knew, it was a devastating blow. Was this how she saw me? As distant, absent, a failure as a husband, as a father? Mom needs passion, Dad, Emily continued, her voice softening again, taking on a tone that was almost pitying. She needs someone who sees her, really sees her, not just the mom, the wife, the housekeeper. Ryan sees her. Ryan makes her feel alive again. Alive again? As if I had somehow extinguished her spirit, suffocated her very being. The accusations were absurd, twisted, yet they were coming from my own daughter, delivered with such conviction, such unwavering belief in her mother's actions. And you blame me for this? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, the weight of her words crushing me. You're actually blaming me for your mother's affair? Emily looked at me, her gaze unwavering, and in that moment, I saw not just my daughter, but a stranger, someone I no longer recognized. Yes, Dad, she said, her voice clear, resolute, devoid of any doubt. In a way, you are. And with those words, the ground beneath me crumbled completely. Betrayal for my wife was a devastating earthquake, but betrayal for my daughter, complicity in the very act that was tearing our family apart, that was the aftershock, the tsunami that threatened to drown me completely. 15 years. And I was suddenly facing not just the loss of my wife, but the alienation of my own child, all in one devastating, incomprehensible moment. Blame me. The words hung in the air, echoing in the suddenly suffocating silence of the bedroom. I looked from Emily to Amelia, their faces mirroring each other, united in their accusation, their judgment. It was like stepping into a bizarre funhouse mirror version of my life, where up was down, right was wrong, and I, the betrayed husband, was somehow the villain. Yes, Caleb, you, Amelia said, her voice hardening, losing the tremor of confession, replaced by a chilling. She stepped forward, joining Emily's side, and suddenly, I was facing a united front, mother and daughter aligned against me. You think you're so innocent? So clueless? You think this just happened out of nowhere? Of course not. I retorted, my voice rising, the injustice of it all fueling my anger. It happened because you chose to cheat. Because you chose to betray our marriage, our family. Oh, betrayal, Amelia scoffed, rolling her eyes, a gesture that felt deliberately dismissive, designed to wound. Please, Caleb, spare me the theatrics. What about betraying yourself? Betraying your own happiness. You think I've been happy these past years? Existing, maybe. Happy. Not even close. And that justifies this? I demanded, gesturing between her and the phantom of Ryan, the ex-husband lurking in the shadows of her confession. An affair with him. Seriously, Amelia? Ryan. The man you used to. I couldn't even finish the sentence, the absurdity of it choking me. Ryan understands me, she interrupted, her voice rising, mirroring my own anger now. He listens to me. He sees me. Something you haven't done in. I don't even remember when. Listens to you? I repeated, incredulous. Is that what you call those late-night phone calls? Those secret meetings? Just listening sessions. Don't be disgusting, Caleb, Emily interjected, her face twisting with distaste. It's about emotional connection, something you clearly wouldn't understand. Emotional connection? I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You think sleeping with your ex-husband is about emotional connection? Emily, you're 17 years old. You have no idea what you're talking about. Oh, I think I do, Dad, she retorted, stepping closer, her eyes flashing with an unsettling intensity. I see how Mom is around Ryan. She's lighter, happier. She laughs again. Real laughs, not those polite little chuckles she gives you. The image of Amelia's forced smiles, her distant politeness, flashed in my mind, and a cold dread washed over me. Had I really been so blind? Had I driven her to this? But even as the self-doubt gnawed at me, the injustice of their accusations burned hotter. And what about me? I asked, my voice trembling now, the anger giving way to a raw, aching pain. What about my happiness? My feelings? Do they even matter? Or is this just all about Amelia's emotional connection? Amelia turned away, avoiding my gaze, her silence speaking volumes. Emily, however, met my eyes, her expression unwavering, almost pitying. Dad, she said, her voice softer now, but no less cutting, you'll be fine. You always are. You're strong. You're independent. Mom needs this. She deserves to be happy, even if it's not with you. Deserves to be happy? I repeated, the words tasting like poison. By destroying her marriage? By betraying her vows? By hurting the man who's loved her for 18 years? Oh, please, Amelia scoffed again, finally meeting my gaze, her eyes hard, devoid of any warmth or affection. Love. Is that what you call this? This routine? This obligation? We haven't been in love for years, Caleb. Years. We were just comfortable. And I'm done being comfortable. I want more than comfortable. I deserve more than comfortable. And Ryan offers you more? I asked, the sarcasm dripping from my voice. Ryan, who you spent years telling me was a disaster. Ryan, who you claimed to despise. That Ryan. Amelia hesitated for a fraction of a second, a flicker of something. Doubt? Shame. Crossing her face before she quickly masked it. He's changed, Caleb, she said, her voice regaining its, almost defiant now. People change. Relationships change. And ours changed into something less. Something empty. Empty. Our life, our marriage, our 18 years together, reduced to a single dismissive word. Empty. The injustice of it all was overwhelming, a tidal wave of betrayal and accusation crashing over me, threatening to drown me in its bitterness. Suddenly, a thought, sharp and cold, pierced through the fog of my shock and anger. Did you plan this? I asked, my gaze narrowing, focusing on Amelia, then shifting to Emily. Was this orchestrated? Did you two plan this together? Amelia's eyes widened, a flicker of surprise. Or was it guilt? Crossing her face. Emily, however, remained impassive, her gaze unwavering. And in that silence, in that unspoken communication between mother and daughter, I saw a truth that was even more chilling than the affair itself. This wasn't just Amelia's betrayal. It was theirs. A joint decision, a twisted alliance forged in secret, leaving me, the husband, the father, completely and utterly alone. And as I looked at them, standing side by side, united against me, a cold dread settled in my stomach. This wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of something far more sinister. Planned. The question hung in the air, raw and accusing. Amelia and Emily exchanged a look, a silent conversation passing between them, a language I was no longer privy to, no longer a part of. It was in that shared glance, that unspoken understanding, that I saw the chilling truth reflected back at me. They had planned this. Not the affair itself, perhaps, but certainly the justification, the blame-shifting, the united front against me. It was a meticulously crafted narrative, designed to absolve Amelia of guilt and place the blame squarely on my shoulders. And Emily, my own daughter, was a willing accomplice. The realization hit me like a physical blow, leaving me breathless, hollowed out. Betrayal wasn't just an act. It was a carefully constructed edifice, built brick by brick, lie upon lie, and I had been living inside it, blind to its true nature, for months, maybe years. The fight drained out of me, leaving behind a hollow ache, a profound sense of defeat. Arguing was pointless. Reasoning was futile. They had their narrative, their twisted version of reality, and they were clinging to it with a ferocity that brooked no dissent. I was the enemy, the obstacle to Amelia's newfound happiness, and Emily, inexplicably, was on their side. "Fine," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion, the word hanging heavy in the silence. "Fine. If that's how you see it, then fine." I turned away from them, the red dress a mocking splash of color in my peripheral vision, and walked out of the bedroom. I didn't know where I was going, what I was going to do, but I knew I couldn't stay there, not for another minute, not in that house filled with their carefully constructed lies and twisted justifications. In the living room, I moved like an automaton, my body acting on autopilot, my mind numb. I grabbed a suitcase from the hall closet, the familiar weight feeling alien in my hands. Clothes from the closet, toiletries from the bathroom, a few framed photos from the bedside table. Snapshots of a life that no longer existed, a family that was now irrevocably broken. Each item I packed felt like another piece of my past being sealed away, another nail in the coffin of my marriage. The house was silent, eerily so, the quiet amplifying the turmoil raging inside me. I didn't hear Amelia or Emily follow me, didn't hear them say a word. They simply let me go, let me walk out of their lives, as if I were a discarded piece of furniture, no longer needed, no longer relevant. As I walked towards the front door, keys in hand, I paused, turning back for one last look. The house stood there, bathed in the soft glow of the evening light, deceptively peaceful, deceptively normal. But behind those walls, within those rooms, lay a wreckage of betrayal and broken promises, a landscape of emotional devastation that stretched as far as I could see. 15 years. Reduced to this. A suitcase in hand, a hollow ache in my chest, and a future stretching out before me, uncertain and terrifyingly alone. Stepping out into the cool evening air, I closed the door behind me, the click echoing in the stillness, a final definitive sound, the closing chapter on a life I thought I knew. As I walked towards my car, parked at the curb, the scent of Amelia's new perfume, that sharp, unfamiliar floral, seemed to linger in the air, a phantom fragrance, a haunting reminder of everything I had lost. Driving away, I didn't look back. The rearview mirror reflected only the empty street, the familiar houses blurring into an indistinct landscape. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion, betrayal, and a profound sense of loss. Years. 15 years. Where had they gone? What had they meant? Had it all been a lie? Had I been living in a fool's paradise, blind to the unhappiness brewing beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect life? Doubt gnawed at me, insidious and relentless. Had I been distant? Emotionally unavailable? Had I failed Amelia in some fundamental way, driving her into the arms of her ex-husband? Emily's accusations echoed in my mind, sharp and accusatory, painting a picture of a man I barely recognized, a cold, detached figure, incapable of love or connection. But even as the self-doubt lingered, the injustice burned hotter. Betrayal was betrayal, no matter how they tried to twist it, to justify it, to blame it on me. Amelia had made a choice, a conscious, deliberate choice to betray her vows, to shatter our marriage, and to involve our daughter in her twisted narrative. And Emily, inexplicably, had chosen to side with her, to become an accomplice in this devastating act of emotional violence. In the days that followed, as I navigated the unfamiliar landscape of single life, living in a small, impersonal apartment, the initial shock began to recede, replaced by a slow, simmering anger and a profound sense of grief. Grief for the life I had lost, for the family that was no more, for the woman I thought I knew and the daughter who had become a stranger. But amidst the wreckage, amidst the pain and confusion, a tiny spark of something else began to flicker. A sense of liberation. Freedom. For the first time in years, I was alone, truly alone, stripped bare of the comfortable routines, the stifling expectations, the weight of a marriage that had become, in Amelia's words, empty. And in that emptiness, in that solitude, a new space began to open up. A space for self-discovery, for rediscovering passions I had long forgotten, for rebuilding a life, not based on the shattered fragments of the past, but on the uncertain promise of the future. It was a daunting prospect, terrifying even, but also, strangely, exhilarating. One evening, weeks after I had left, I found myself wandering through a park, lost in thought, the setting sun casting long shadows across the path. I stumbled upon a small open-air art fair, stalls filled with paintings, sculptures, handcrafted jewelry. Something drew me to a particular stall, a collection of vibrant, abstract paintings, bursting with color and energy. I found myself drawn to one in particular, a chaotic swirl of blues and greens and golds, a tempest of emotion captured on canvas. The artist, a woman with kind eyes and paint-splattered hands, smiled at me. "It speaks to you, doesn't it?" she said, her voice gentle. I nodded, unable to articulate the emotions churning within me, emotions that somehow found a reflection in those vibrant, chaotic strokes of paint. "It's called rebirth," she said, her gaze knowing. "Chaos before creation. Destruction before renewal. Rebirth." The word resonated deep within me, a tiny seed of hope planted in the barren landscape of my broken heart. Maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end. Maybe it was just a beginning. A painful, devastating beginning, but a beginning nonetheless. And as I stood there, gazing at that painting, a chaotic swirl of color and emotion, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not happiness, not yet, but something akin to it. A fragile, tentative spark of possibility. The possibility of healing, of rebuilding, of finding a new path forward, even in the wreckage of everything I had lost. The possibility of rebirth.